Every old school bodybuilder claims that they do 4 sets of 10, but the reality is only one of those sets is actually hard. The rest, they're just ramping. I'm Faz, this is my channel Fazlifts. I provide educational content on the topic of getting jacked every week, and today I would like to challenge the notion of how we interpret so-called high volume bodybuilding from the 70s right through to the 2000s. Stick around, because by the end you'll see how this one concept, ramping, completely changes what we think high volume training actually is. Now, over the course of this video, what I want to highlight is how traditional ramping is done, but also its applicability to you with some personal anecdotes. Ramping is the style of training where you start with a warm-up weight, but you restrict the reps. So it's different to traditional pyramid style training. You're not doing higher reps for a set where it's easy to make it challenging. You're just sticking to a range, let's say 10. Your first set will be 10 with an easy weight, and then you progressively add weight, but you keep the reps at 10. So that means as you're adding weight, you're building up towards that one heavy set of 10 reps at the end. And generally speaking, if you're adding weight, but still hitting the same reps with significantly more load, the earlier sets probably weren't that challenging. Now, there are exceptions to that, and I'm going to challenge that in the course of this video, because I think there is a bit more nuance here, which we're probably not seeing. But first of all, I want to say this conversation is as old as the internet, okay? It was even a meme back in the T-Nation days, early 2000s. People would talk about ramping sets, and all of a sudden, all the old timers would be like, oh God, not this topic again. Because it's a topic which has been done over and over again. Like, yes, we know for a fact the vast majority of bodybuilders, probably after Arnold's era, were using ramping sets, not pyramids, and they were only leading up to one top heavy set with an all-out weight with all the supportive gear that they might have used. Yes, we know that. They weren't doing traditional high-rep training as we might now think from the evidence-based space, where you take a weight and you just do set after set after set with that weight, maybe using down sets to reduce the weight and stay in the range. They weren't doing that type of training. Very few of them did. They just ramped up to a heavy set. My goal with this video is not just to highlight that one very obvious point. My goal with this video is actually to challenge the applicability of ramping sets to you, because there's this idea going around that if that's what the bodybuilders are doing, they're all just doing low volume, they're all training the same, like Dorian's training the same as you, Ronnie, then that's some kind of nod towards low volume training. I want to just push back against that, because I don't think that's to be the case. I think there is nuance in the way this is performed, and I'm going to give you some of my experience, my personal anecdotes of how this can differ from regular people like you and me to the top pros. So getting straight into it, why do elite bodybuilders use ramping? Quite frankly, they are simply too strong for straight sets across with the same weight. Like Ronnie pressing 200-pound dumbbells, he's not going to be doing that 4 or 5 times. It's not sustainable. The recovery cost, the connective tissue strain, and the setup fatigue of getting the dumbbells into place will just make it impossible. The 4 sets on paper being 1 set in practice means we're just not going to see that happen again and again. So here's why it might not work for you. If you're benching half that, let's say 100-pounders, which is still a respectable weight done in a bodybuilding rep range with good bodybuilding form. If you're benching those 100-pounders, you're not generating the same total stress per set on the body, on the connective tissues, the setting up into position. You can afford and you can benefit from doing 2 or 3 top sets with that weight to get the same amount of total stimulus. Now, I'll give you an anecdote from my own personal experience. So back in the day, I was coached by one of the UK's top powerlifters, a guy called Tom Martin. Now, I used to go occasionally and go and lift with him. So we would train together. We would say do deadlifts. Now, over the course of a deadlift session, we would all just progressively ramp up to whatever our working weights for the day. Tom would do 1 set. He would do 1 working set. I would do 3. So why the disparity? Well, here's what would happen. So we'd be doing stiff leg deadlifts, okay? From the floor, sets of about 6 to 8. 1 plate aside, 2 plate aside, 3 plate aside, 4 plate aside, 5 plate aside. That was my working weight. So I would do 3 sets with 5 plates aside. It's a big weight for stiff leg deadlifts for sets of 8. Now, Tom, on the other hand, would go from those 5 plates, which is about 220 kilos, he would go up to 260 kilos, to 300 kilos, to 340 kilos, and then he would do his top set at 340 kilos. Do you guys comprehend the amount of stress on the body that those kind of weights deliver? Because I can tell you, 5 plates for sets and reps on any given Thursday where I have to repeat that workout on a Monday, is extremely stressful on the body. It has a toll. Going up to 340 kilos, I don't think people really comprehend the level of stress that you get on the body, not only at that top weight, but going above that top weight. Just because he's super strong doesn't mean 220, 260, 300, which are warm-up sets for him, are not going to have a toll on the body. So there's that. You have to manage the fatigue. You have to ensure that you're not just absolutely destroying yourself when you're that strong. Does that mean you guys should do the same thing? Does that mean I should have done the same thing? Well, no, because I could do and I could tolerate for more volume at a lower weight, which was still a very respectable weight. So do you guys get what I'm saying? Yes, old school bodybuilders did ramping sets. Yes, they typically only did one top set per exercise, but that is not a nod towards low volume training or some kind of reason for why you should do only one set per exercise. If it works for you, cool. But odds are it's not going to get you as far as if you did more work. And that's really the bottom line of this video. It's really kind of what I'm driving home with this. It's a conversation which is so old. It's decades old. And people will always use it to say, this is why we should only use one top set, or the pros never did high volume training. If you're not that strong, you don't understand. And the next thing I want to say is there is also a hidden variable at play, okay? Because if you look at, say, Ronnie warming up to do front squats. Now, what did he do in those first few sets? Those first few sets were a continuous tension, making it harder for himself. He was actively looking to make the lift harder on every set. Now, only when the sets got challenging is when he decided to get a little bit looser with form. Depth was maybe a little bit compromised, and he started to add in supportive gear, like a belt, knee wraps. So there is a nuance here as well. And I'm going to point out just three things. The first one is form tightness. Okay, it's very, very common for early sets to be stricter, cleaner, and often with more range of control, or with a specific range to make it harder, not easier. And second thing is supportive gear. Quite a few of those guys would add in wrist wraps, elbow sleeves, belts, and knee wraps. That makes it possible to add weight and maintain your reps later on. But if you're in the gym and you've got super clean form and you're not using supportive gear and you're going to maintain that for all those sets, and yeah, of course, you're going to see a much stronger difference. Those guys were not as attached to clean form or lifting raw as some of you may be. Now, I'm not recommending you loosen up with form, because I think if you don't know what you're doing, it can be dangerous, but it's what they did. You look at old video clips of Arnold Schwarzenegger doing a barbell curl. Well, he would start with strict curls and he would end with heavy cheek curls. That was his strategy. So he was getting those effective reps. And I think this is a crucial point that people misunderstand, because you can get looser with form, you can add in supportive gear, you can employ forced reps and still maintain the repetitions in a ramping format. But that's the level of nuance which a lot of guys are not looking at, because there's always a question of how do we do looser form? How do we log this looser form? How do we log the supportive gear? It becomes quite complicated, but a lot of those guys, they weren't writing stuff down. They were just in the moment, lifting and doing what they felt they needed to do to get a great stimulus. So all I'm saying with this video is the argument which has been presented historically is bodybuilders who say they do high volume are actually doing low volume, and that's a nod towards the hitters or the low volume guys. I don't think it's quite that clear. I think there's a lot more nuance involved. And I think when you get to that level of strength, things change. When you are able to sensibly employ cheating to add more stress to your body, things change. I think when you're sensibly able to use forced reps, things also change. So the practical takeaway is this. If you're just a regular lifter, you're not that versed with what I'm talking about here, with loosening up form, adding supportive gear, using forced reps, or whatever else, you're probably just better off with sticking to regular straight sets across, or maybe a challenging pyramid training like I discussed in my previous video. If you're elite and you're truly moving massive loads, ramping might be the only safe way to do things, and you may be able to take into account other factors I've talked about here. Both methods can work, but I think you need to understand why. And I think you need to understand that nuance and not just use this to nod towards low volume training. Right guys, if you think that was a helpful video which helped to challenge some of the stereotypes and notions around this topic, which has been going on for decades, then please watch my breakdown on pyramid training. I think you'll find that useful and probably a better compromise for the average person listening to this video. And I will see you over there.